Hello, good evening, and welcome. I hope you're well. This is Omar Moore. I'm a film critic, and I want to speak to you about Tar. You should see the Focus Features logo right there. And I want to just let this play out here for a moment. You see the cell phone. I'll talk about this actually after this image passes. You see that there is a woman, and I'll go into this a bit more in just a moment. You hear that sound that you heard, the sound of a plane in flight, and a woman, as I pointed out, with an eye patch over her face, over her eyes, and she's sleeping. Not comfortably, though. And we can tell, based on the messages that we just saw, that certainly there was no comfort as far as the text messages went on something that resembles Instagram on their cell phone that you just saw. Now, this next sequence is a really good one. Well, everything about this film I love. I am obsessed with this film, which is directed by Todd Field and stars Cate Blanchett. I'll get into the cast a little bit. But for the next 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to see credits. Now, I love this idea because credits are usually something that come at the end of movies. These types of credits, particularly. Now, there's credits at the beginning of movies, but not every movie starts with credits anymore. That's something that happens less and less these days with a number of films that are out. But these are the kinds of credits you normally see at the end of a movie. There is, I think, good reason for the credits to come first. One of the things I cynically believe is that the reason why these credits were put first like this is because a great many moviegoers walk out of the theater when a film ends. And when I say ends, I mean when the story ends. People get up and walk out. Most people do not stick around for the end credits. And I can't stand when people do that. I would like for people to sit down and watch the entire thing until the end credits are finished. But people don't do that, especially here in the United States. We get up halfway through, or maybe just about a minute and a half into the beginning of the end credits. But I love this, and I think that, cynically speaking, the reason why Todd Field did it like this is so that people would be forced to watch the end credits at the beginning of the movie. So I want to get to that scene that you just saw at the beginning there. We don't know who that woman is yet that you saw. The woman that you saw, we have no idea. I mean, we have, I guess, an idea, but we don't know. And I hope you've seen this movie already. And people are talking about this particular person. That cell phone is very important. Cell phones are very important in this movie. And I think you realize that if you've seen it before. If you haven't, you may as well just shut this audio commentary off right now. I am so pleased to be able to do this. I really, really am. I love this film so much, as I've said. And what you're hearing here over the last 2 minutes or so is Eliza Vargas Fernandez. She is a shaman in South America. And she is singing here something called an Icaro. Icaro. Icaro is a healing song. It is a medicine song. It is a song that is designed to call out for healing. And that's the best way I can put it. You should really get familiar with Eliza Vargas Fernandez's work. Just look her up on YouTube and just listen to her. She's absolutely beautiful in so many ways. So we've heard two pieces of sound, and this film is all about dissonance and process and power. And I'll try to get into a lot of that here. This first scene, of course, after all of what we've heard so far, is Cate Blanchett. This is the same person, Cate Blanchett, who we saw on the plane. This is one and the same person. She looks a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, taking a deep breath, inhaling, exhaling, and all the rest. And all of a sudden, here comes somebody who apparently is her assistant. That would be Noémie Merlant. And she is providing some pills and water, and off she goes. And here comes Adam Gopnik, he of The New Yorker. And I love this scene. This is a scene that lasts about maybe 10 minutes. It's a very important scene to really reestablish and establish who this person is that we're looking at. And we see this particular scene in front of us. These are the two assistants, one of two assistants, scattering all of these records, vinyls, across the floor. I don't know where that might be, if that is an apartment or wherever that is, but we see what's going on here, and we see these two feet. One strokes the other, the toe strokes the foot. I'll talk about that image as well. There's so much going on in this movie. What you see here now, Egon Brandstetter, you just saw that there. And that is Egon Brandstetter that you also saw talking as well. He is a tailor in Berlin, in Germany. And what you're seeing here is happened right at his store in Berlin. And this is what I describe as the making of Lydia Tar. And that is the character that Cate Blanchett plays. This is about the construction of this character. These scenes are designed to show you, and there was Cate Blanchett a moment ago, this construction of who this person is. The tailoring. She's being tailored, and as she is being tailored and fitted in a suit jacket, we're also hearing Adam Gopnik's voice talking about who this person is and what her philosophy about music is, and about European classical music, and about the accomplishments of this person named Lydia Tar. She is a formidable person, just by the accomplishments of, we've not really seen her face so much. We've seen her face briefly, but there's this aura of excellence that precedes this person who's now looking at us. And now we see another figure, the back of the head of someone, female, redhead, staring ahead into the distance. At the back of this image, we see the two chairs in blur, and one of those seats is Adam Gopnik's, the other is Cate Blanchett's. And now another image, another assistant, the same assistant, Noémie Merlant, this time lip reading what Adam Gopnik is saying. This is again another form of the building of Lydia Tar, the building of this character, but it also suggests that Lydia Tar may not be as formidable and as powerful as she appears. We've already seen her coming in at the very first moment, taking deep breaths and looking very anxious. And you will see some more anxiety here. This introduction to Lydia Tar at a New Yorker forum seems so ridiculous because it's so good. There's something satirical about it. There's something comical about it. And I sometimes think, I do think that parts of this movie you could look at as a wickedly macabre comedy. Because no one's introduction list is really this long. Even the greatest people and the most talented people don't have a list of credentials this long. Or maybe they do. But nobody usually reads them all out. So it seems as if there's something pretentious about the whole thing. So we haven't really heard Lydia Tar speak yet, and yet there's so much that's already been said about her by at least two different people. Adam Gopnik, and then earlier on in the cell phone image that you saw, people texting each other. Now we're beginning to hear from Lydia Tar herself. I just think that what we're seeing here is an establishment of who this person is, what they believe in, what they think about music, but particularly European classical music. And we soon begin to learn that Lydia Tar is a composer. Well, we already know that because there's been lots of information that's been given to us about all the symphony orchestras that she has served at. In this very sexist world we live in, female composers, conductors rather, are extremely rare. Because of the sexism and the misogyny, it's a very, very male-centric and very, again, misogynistic world. And that extends to the world of composers and especially of conductors. By the way, you may hear some ambient noise during the course of the next 2+ hours. That is the way things go when you're trying to record an audio commentary in a very, shall we say, metropolitan city. There's a sense of confidence about Lydia Tar, and I like the way that Cate Blanchett exudes that. I also think Adam Gopnik is really good here, playing himself. It's not an easy thing to do, to play yourself on film, especially against an actor as formidable as Cate Blanchett. I think Adam does a really good job here. I actually really enjoy him doing what he's doing here. But I do think that Cate Blanchett, because she's so good at what she does, I think she actually makes it very, very easy for him. And great actors like Cate Blanchett are the kind of actors who are very generous and very giving. And they make you feel at home. They make you feel very comfortable, even if you might be intimidated by them. You see now that Lydia Tar has become a much more confident individual. She's in her element here, talking about the kinds of things that composers and specifically conductors do, and her whole philosophy about what a conductor does and what a conductor's role is. Again, this film is about dissonance. 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 This clash between music and sound. This clash between what you hear and how you interpret what you hear and what you interpret. And that's the dissonance. The sounds you hear and the sounds you think you hear. The sounds that you hear and the way they make you feel. The music you hear and how it makes you feel. I also think that Tar, as a film, is about the way that we process things. It's about process. It's obviously about power, as I've mentioned, but it's about the way we process information. And how we understand or comprehend or misunderstand. There's scenes in here that I'll be telling you about where characters mishear what has been said by another character to them. And it happens twice, 2 times that I can clearly remember. And I'll point those out when they arrive. There's something incredibly literal about Tar, because it speaks to verbalizing words that describe feelings and verbalizing the feelings you get from sounds. Music and sound make us feel a certain way, and I think that you'll hear about that later on. I know you will in this film. Leonard Bernstein talks about that. And music reaches the parts of us that lots of other things don't touch. And music describes feelings that words often cannot describe. And I think that the score that you'll hear in this film or maybe not hear in this film, from the excellent composer Hilda Guðnadóttir, I think represents that very, very well. An articulation of feelings that you cannot put into words. I think that that's why Hilda Guðnadóttir's score is so good in this film, and you barely hear it. You have to actually watch this film on some kind of portable device and stick your earphones in, your headphones in, to hear her score. It is mixed so very low. The craftsmanship of this film is absolutely brilliant. Tar also deals with things like the Me Too movement. Well, not specifically the Me Too movement, but that's what it's being called, the Me Too era, where you have powerful people doing things that are criminal. And it's certainly not for the first time that that's ever happened in human history. But the molestation, the rape, the violation of usually women and girls by powerful men. And those men are usually white, but they are also black at times, and they are also brown at times, and they're also other groups of people as well who are in power. They could be female as well, of any different kind of race. It is power that is the focus. This scene has gone on now for a number of minutes, and it's a really good scene. Tar was shot in 2021 and partly in 2022. Todd Field spent a lot of time writing the script here while he was holed up during the pandemic. And there we see that shot again of a redhead, and I'll explain who that will be later. This is the assistant played by Nomi Merlant. Her name in this movie is Francesca Lentini. And here is somebody who's a member of the audience that just attended the lecture the conversation that you just watched with Adam Gopnik and Lydia Tar. And clearly there's a flirtation going on here. And Lydia Tar is absolutely soaking this all up. She talks about conducting, and then she drops this line in here about everyone is capable of murder. And keep that particular line in mind when you watch the rest of this film. You can tell the flirtation's going on here. And here comes that line about murder that Lydia Tar will bring forth in just a moment at least. Here it is now. It's a really important line. Not until I heard it that I became convinced we're all capable of murder. And then she switches. That's a fantastic handbag, by the way. That is kind of a very either schizophrenic or, I don't know, psychopathic type of switch. And she talks about 11 as a prime number and how we're victim and perpetrator at the same time. That's a very important prelude to the line about we're all capable of murder. Because what this film sets up is, I think, a very, very finely balanced character who I think is in some ways a victim, but also is most definitely a perpetrator. And here we see the cell phone again, with the text messages going back and forth. Placido Domingo room. Placido Domingo was someone who was accused of sexual assault by a number of women, and his career basically is done for, or has gone down the toilet, although he's still doing things, I think. And he was accused by a number of women of committing acts of, I don't even know exactly specifically whether it was rape, but any kind of sexual assault is heinous and disgusting. And Placido Domingo, I think you will agree, is a very powerful man in music. Was one of the tenors in the three tenors, along with, one of them was Luciano Pavarotti. Oh, yes, this scene here. On the left is the actor Mark Strong. He plays Elliot Kaplan, who is someone who is a composer in his own right, conductor, but he's also the head of this particular trust at the Accordion, which is a place that is bringing up talent for composing and conducting. And Cate Blanchett's character Lydia Tar and Elliot Kaplan are coordinating on a program to bring in more female conductors, to develop them. And so they're talking about this a little bit at this meeting over lunch. And clearly, we see a character who's distracted and preoccupied. And you can tell that she doesn't really think very highly of her child, Petra, because she kind of mentions her as an afterthought here. And there's the cell phone again. Again, the cell phone is going to be a very important character in this movie. I think one of the things about this scene I love is the shorthand that they speak. Because you've been given all this information already as a viewer, and you don't have to know anything about European classical music or about the culture of the conductor and what that conductor does, because you've already been given a lot of that information, so that this scene now becomes a more relaxed shorthand colloquy, the colloquialism between Elliot and Lydia here. I think in some ways in this particular scene, what you see is Lydia Tar humoring Elliot Kaplan here. I think she already knows that she is such a top-notch conductor, and she probably views Elliot as quote-unquote inferior, lest I say that word, but I do think that that's what she might be thinking. She is now citing that someone else in the room who she's being clearly distracted by has his eye on Elliot Kaplan. And this is kind of this reference to perhaps, in my view, probably someone who maybe Elliot's gay, perhaps. He said, the last thing I want is to have to be buttonholed in here by someone who is exactly like me. So maybe that's a reference to he doesn't want to be approached by other men, and perhaps he's uncomfortable. I don't know. But me as a straight man saying that, I don't necessarily can't claim to have the insight. But maybe someone who is gay would have, well, not maybe, they would have more insight perhaps into this. I think they would. But I get from that scene that he just does not want to be approached. Perhaps he's got some shame about his own standing as a gay man. I don't know. Maybe that's an open interpretation, though, as to what you can get from that scene. Now there's the way that this camera moves. I love how Florian Hofmeister, the cinematographer, moves this camera. You'll start to see it soon, and I'll talk about it more. But Monica Willie's editing is really good as well, and how these shots get constructed, it's really great. The camera seems to kind of genuflect to Cate Blanchett when she's talking about things that have to do with power, and the camera catches her here, kind of, mulling over what her next move on the chessboard is. She's got this power suit on as well. Elliot looks more like a relaxed business suit look, but Cate Blanchett's got this power suit on. She looks like she is absolutely on top of her game. And Lydia Tar is on top of her game. That is a power suit, and she wears it well, I have to say. I don't think that Elliot is someone who wears his accoutrements very well. His couture is a little bit off as far as I'm concerned. And he looks a bit bedraggled and ill-fitted, although he's in a suit that's relaxed, a business suit that I think I mentioned earlier. Very relaxed. Too relaxed. He's an amateur. The relationship here is a pro and an amateur. And guess who the pro is? That's right. Lydia Tar. She's patronizing him here. And I think he probably senses it. Now, we've got this scene. This scene's very important. The way that the camera moves here. Florian Hofmeister, who is the cinematographer here. Watch how this camera begins to establish space and then intimacy. I'll take you through this. And look at the back of the room at the top of the shot. There's someone standing up. That would be the assistant, Francesca, played by Nomi Merlon. And she's holding something. And I'm betting you that is a cell phone that she's holding. And she's either texting or recording this interaction. Note that I said that. Note at the top of the steps or the benches there. That is Nomi Merlon. And I'm telling you right now, that's very important because she's holding a device, looks like a cell phone from here, at least I'm expecting it is. And that's going to come into play in this movie later on. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I am talking about. I believe she's recording this whole interaction between the two of them. And if not, she's certainly texting something. I think she's recording it. Now, Max here is the young gentleman there. Looks like he could be a Latino or Latinx. He could be a light complexioned brother, black man. He describes himself as a black indigenous person of color, a BIPOC, who is pangender. Now look at the way that this shot, and it's one long unbroken shot, establishes Cate Blanchett at the center of the frame. Then it starts to move. Watch the camera track her, follow her, right? And this is Steadicam. Watch how we see this dynamic between Lydia Tar and the students here at the Juilliard. And watch how this happens. Look at the way that Cate Blanchett begins to close space, establish distance, and how the camera shows us framing and the distance between characters. It's all about a power dynamic. And right now, Lydia Tar is showing off. She's totally showing off. And the showing off becomes a complete humiliation of one student in that classroom. And you know who that is. Spoiler alert, it's the person tapping his foot furiously on the wooden floor. You can see that he's intimidated by her. Max is intimidated by Lydia, and who wouldn't be? Because she's a very, very powerful person, knows what she's about, very confident. And again, look at this shot. This shot establishes power. The students are behind her. In other words, they could be in agreement with her. They're backing her up, so to speak. And she's just waxing on poetically. And she is now really in her element here. And she speaks nonstop. She doesn't really take a breath at all. And I don't mean that to be sexist. What I'm saying is that she is emphasizing her points and principles about music. And she's right here, what music requires of you and how people hear things differently. I talked about interpretation and how we hear and interpret things. And watch that camera, it swivels around, and now the space is closed. The scene itself is compressed, or the shot rather is compressed into this very intimate moment between the two of them, in the sense that it's just the two of them in the shot. All the others have been excluded from the shot now. Now she's really boring in on Max. This is a withering display now. It's one thing to instruct a student, but it's another to completely eviscerate one. And what you're seeing here with Lydia Tar is an evisceration. And it's a humiliation. The argument here is whether or not someone who has had 20 kids or has run all over town and had different women, some man who's done that or some woman who's done that, is someone who we think of in the same light when we listen to their music or whatever they do that makes them someone who's renowned. Does that affect the way we think or feel about them? And so this whole scene is an argument and a genuflection into the Me Too era. And here you can't tell in a moment whether this person's male or female here. Right here, that shot. That's power. That's power. Her back is to you, a la Miles Davis. And with that shockingly blonde or platinum mane of hair that the lighting shows, and you see it, right? But you never saw her face there when she had her back to you. And at that point, that's a power angle. That's a statement about power. Dressed in black, she's got gray pants on, but from the distance there, it looks like she's all dressed in black except for her blue blouse. Now, she calls herself a U-Haul lesbian. I don't know whether or not a gay woman would typically refer to herself like this. I don't think she would. Now, again, I do have, there are people I know who I would call friends who are gay. I'd have to ask them whether or not they would, because somehow I don't think that they would. I think somewhere along the line, maybe Lydia, like Elliot, is uncomfortable with her own being gay, and especially in a world of composers and conductors. And there are many conductors and composers who are gay, but I do think that the structure in which they work is very much anti-gay and very much anti-women and anti-black, especially when you're talking about white European classical music. And then notice she mimicked Glenn Gould there when she kind of hunched over, because Glenn Gould was world famous for doing that. You can see Max is so uncomfortable with Lydia here. He keeps tapping his foot. It's annoying, but it shows you how nervous he is around her. He knows that she's very powerful, and he also knows that she can determine what kind of grade he gets in this class that she's teaching. There's a seduction in this scene in a very strange way when Lydia talks about the music. And then she kind of does the Satchmo Louis Armstrong impression here. Well, what do you think, Max? And look at the way she's looking at him. It's kind of very inappropriate, too. She kind of looks to his groin area, and then she grabs right near his groin, grabs his thigh, which is really something that she should not be doing. No one should be doing that to a student or to anyone without their permission. So it's very inappropriate. Again, it goes back to what I've been talking about with the Me Too era. But I think it's a lot more serious than just Me Too. This is about inappropriate conduct by someone in power. It's a form of harassment, and it's a form of battery and assault, quite frankly. This camera movement here is so powerful. This shot here where the camera is tracking Lydia just talking, while keeping the focus on Max, who is way in the distance. This power angle again. This is this gulf between them. It's a very unfair fight. And Lydia now is completely decimating and eviscerating Max. And this is the argument she's making about what on earth does someone who has done some heinous things perhaps got to do with the music that they produce. If the music's great, that's all that counts. And I think that's the argument she's making here. Notice her hair is not that shocking blonde platinum anymore. It's kind of more the dirty blonde that she has. But the lighting where she walked there made her look like the very, very, there's blonde. And the way that European society looks at blonde hair and white women being blonde, and how that's played up in Hollywood movies. Gentlemen prefer blondes, Marilyn Monroe, da 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 da. And that device is used there by Florian Hofmeister as a cinematographer, and how she's worshipped. The blonde-haired white woman is worshipped in American and European cultures. Now she's really ticked off Max, and he has let her know about it in no uncertain terms. She really did whoop his backside here. And even if you might agree with a lot of what she says here, she was wrong to do that to him, to this extent. And she says, if you want to wear the mask, want to dance the mask, you must service the composer. Which is a very sexually suggestive, when you think about it, line, and very inappropriate once again. It's basically saying, if you want power, you have to service me. That's really what she's saying underneath all of that. And the word service, you can put two and two together and figure out what she's saying to you. Now, if you want to talk about construction of character, and I talked about this earlier with the beginning of Egon Brandstetter and the cutting up and tailoring of Lydia Tar. If you want to do another different construction, just look at Wikipedia. That is absolutely a construction. And look at the red-haired woman again, the assistant. That is Krista Taylor, played by Sylvia Foote. And I dare say Sylvia Foote's character, Lydia Taylor, Krista Taylor, also composed that Wikipedia page. There we see the doubling that we've seen, two mirrors, these split personalities, the kind of warring persons reflected in two mirrors. This has a lot going on. There's a lot of doubling throughout this movie. We just saw that with Francesca being doubled when she came in. Reflections, this kind of internal battle, these two things that these people want. These two things about people, the duality of people. And again, the doubling you just saw again as Francesca walked through, and the doubling you saw with Lydia there, and the mirrors you see there again. And Francesca wants power. She wants to be a conductor. And she's also having an affair with Lydia. We'll find that out here. But she's not the only one who's having an affair with Lydia. There's a triangle going on between she and Lydia and Krista, who we saw just out of frame. That's the same person we saw at the beginning when she was with her back to us, red hair. We saw her looking on into the distance at Lydia Tar and Adam Gopnik. That's the same Krista Taylor. And all three of them are involved in this love triangle that really goes off the rails, as we will find out here. Of course, you know this if you watched the movie already. I hope you've watched the movie already. Now we have another doubling, this time a tripling. It's kind of the Three Faces of Eve effect. Joanne Woodward. And we see it here, three mirrors. And the kind of repetition of voices and repetition and interpretation of a voice that's been heard on NPR that Lydia has now repeated and mimicked. Sound and noise and voices are so much a part of Lydia Tar's vocabulary. And now we kind of, if you listen carefully, you can hear part of the score from Hilda Gunnardotter. It's mixed so low that you can barely hear it. I bet you that maybe a cat or a dog could hear it much more loudly than we as human beings can. Todd Field's influences, no doubt, undoubtedly are Stanley Kubrick. He worked with Stanley Kubrick in the 1999 film Eyes Wide Shut. That's the last film that Stanley Kubrick did before he passed away. And you can tell in some of these shots there is a sense of Stanley Kubrick that Todd Field pays homage to. And you can tell also in some of this movie that he also pays homage to Ingmar Bergman as a filmmaker. And also there's some moments where you can see some Terrence Malick as well in this movie. just some of the shots and some of the things that come in. There's so much going on in this film. I mean, I've already talked over a number of important things, but there's so much. It's such a densely packed film, so layered. I mean, you really probably need two audio commentaries to deal with this, but I don't know that you want to hear my voice for another 2 hours and 38 minutes again, but I might tempt that kind of fate. You can tell the relationship between them is quite easy, but it's also uneasy, again, because Francesca wants power. She wants power. She wants to be a conductor. She wants to be promoted. But this is the way that she has to do it, by having an affair with someone and catering to her so that she can do the bidding that Francesca would love for her to do, which is to get her in as a composer. This is how a conductor, this is how power works, for better or worse. At least the kind of power that's inappropriate, that says that if you want something, if you want to dance the mask, you have to service the composer. You have to service me. That's what Lydia Tar is telling you. And Francesca probably got taught that lesson a number of years ago. And she's learning it. She is an apt pupil. Here's Lydia inside the plane bathroom on a jet, private jet, and she's got these pills. These are the kinds of pills I think are supposed to be the ones for her wife. We find out later on is Sharon, played by Nina Hoss, fantastic actor from Germany. So here's that mirror again. You see the doubling again, and this book by Sackville West, Challenge, is about unrequited love. It's kind of like this obsessive, it's about obsessive love. And there's this kind of pattern on there. It's kind of very creepy and haunting. And that makes an appearance again several times. This is Krista Taylor sending this note and this book to Lydia. And we'll see that Krista Taylor is the person, because what you're seeing in a few moments here, and here it is, an anagram that Lydia is doing of Krista Taylor, and she says, at risk. That's her first name there. That's a really smart device. But you can tell that Krista is now stalking Lydia. I love the way the lights just kind of close down here. This very spacious house that they live in. And you will soon see that Lydia is home in Berlin with her wife, Sharon, played by Nina Hoss, the great Nina Hoss. Who, her character Sharon has these heart issues. I guess they're palpitations or heart issues of some kind. And now you can see how deceitful Lydia is. She pretends that she's going to get some pills out of a sink area or out of a closet or drawer, when in fact those pills she took out of her pocket that Francesca got for her, and now she's going to pretend as if, or lie, quite frankly, blatantly, to her wife, saying, oh, here's when I found this. And she didn't find anything. She found it in her pocket, and she pulled it out of her pocket. So we already know that there is a deceitful relationship going on here, and that Lydia is cheating, obviously, on her wife here. And I suspect she lied about the bag when Sharon asks her, well, what's the bag? Who's it from? Who got you this? She says Elliot did, but I bet you it was probably a gift, perhaps from either Krista or perhaps from Francesca, the two people she's having an illicit affair with, sexual affair with. These are two students of hers, by the way. These are two people who want to get somewhere in life, and again, she is courting both of them, and this is power corrupting. This is what human beings do, and I think as we listen here, you will hear Count Basie with a great tune called Lil Darlin'. Lil Darlin', the Count Basie Orchestra. You have to get that tune. It's really, really nice. And you already hear as well Sharon talking about, I called your mobile phone at your hotel last night. And that will be a theme throughout this movie. Again, the phone, the phone, the phone, the cell phone. That is a key component of this film. I love this scene because there's a softness to it. This is the Bergman-esque portion of the film, I feel, that this evokes Ingmar Bergman and how there's relatively little movement. The coloring, I kind of think of Autumn Sonata in a way, but this is kind of a softer pink and a little bit of red. I love the lighting, and these two characters kind of in profile in a little bit. The two heads, kind of like Persona from Ingmar Bergman. Kind of this inseparable bond between them, but yet there's so much conflict between them, and it's radiated off the performance by Sharon Goodnow, played by Nina Hoss. And Nina Hoss here is really great. I love the way that she kind of gently suggests things with her eyes and her facial expression. And you'll see a lot more of that, and it progressively becomes more pronounced as the film moves on. These two have been together now as a couple for 20 years in this film. And you can tell they know each other's moves. And I think that Sharon knows Lydia better than Lydia knows herself. And usually that's true in a relationship. Sometimes your better half, a lot of times, knows you better than you know you. Oh, this moment is great too. Now Lydia wakes up in bed and she's trying to figure out, okay, who is this person? Who is this person who's woken me up on the alarm clock? And she says it's MTT, Michael Tilson Thomas, who has had a really tough time with cancer, really horrible time of it. He's still conducting at the San Francisco Symphony. He used to be the director of it, I think, and he had to step down from that. And I wish him the best, all the very best, as he battles through here with cancer. It's such an ordeal. And, in fact, he was at the symphony literally during the time I recorded this commentary. He was doing something on Brahms. And, I wish him all the very best, Michael Tilson Thomas. It's funny, Lydia Tar actually kind of slanders him here, basically equates him to a porn star. That tells you something about Lydia's mindset too, and what she thinks about these things. I mean, that's this sexual angle here, using this image of a screaming porn star with the work that she does. These things bleed into each other. I'm not this fan, and you see this is Petra, their child, the child of Sharon and Lydia. I'm not this fan of, oh, you can separate the art from the artist. I don't believe you can. The artist and the art are coming from the same place. It's that human being. And it doesn't matter how heinous that person is. It doesn't matter at all. If they've done something wrong, they've done something wrong. So whether the music's great or whether it's not, to me, is kind of secondary and irrelevant. Even though the points that were made by Lydia to Max in the earlier scene that you just saw a few minutes ago are valid in a lot of ways. But when your conduct is as, say, Woody Allen's, or say Harvey Weinstein's, or say Kevin Spacey's, or say Matt Lauer's, there is no separation. And I think European culture likes to present this dichotomy, this separation, that there's the art and the artist, and those two things aren't one and the same. Well, they are one and the same. Bill Cosby, one and the same. And they use their art to tell you who they really are as people, who they really are. And here's who Lydia Tar really is, at least one facet of her. And she says that she is Petra's father. Now, this child here, Johanna, must be all of what, maybe 10 years old, 8 years old, 9. And you've got Lydia, who is in her 50s, intimidating this 8, 9, 10-year-old child. It's really frightening. And look at the facial expression and the lighting here, and the tension in the camera. And look how frightened Johanna is. Look at the eyes of that child. She is petrified, look. And now look at this casual, oh, hi. Very, very, this is the kind of the wickedly macabre comedy part of the film. It's really, really depraved. Very depraved. And there's sections of this film where the audience stops really trying to like this character and then begins to see this character for who she really, I think, is. There's the doubling again, the mirror, the reflection, the doubling. Who is this person that we're looking at? You know, are we looking at this person who is, a great accomplished person, or is she really a scumbag? Or is she both? And I think that you can be both. You can't separate these two things. I love the way that Florian Hofmeister tries to. And it's very compelling. And now she's going to look underneath to see whose boots. And hey, two women in the bathroom. I love this shot here. The architecture of this shot's really good. And watch Sebastian, played by Alan Corduna. And look at him tapping nervously on that pen or pencil. And he is intimidated by her as well. And notice the shot here of Francesca coming in and out of the frame and leaving the frame. That happens a lot too in the movie for a reason. Because this story is not Lydia Tar's story. Lydia Tar's story is being told by these assistants of hers, by Francesca, by Krista. They are really the narrators of this film, the authors of this film and this vision. They are the ones constructing Lydia Tar as they have come to know her, as they think she is. They believe this is who she really is. There's Nina Hoss again. Love the light in the background there and how it hits her hair like that. She's wearing this black suit, black outfit. I love that. Cate Blanchett here. Watch her facial expression. Those same boots. And watch what she does to her scorecard. She erases something. Bingo. I love this scene too. This is Julian Glover. He plays Andris Davis, who is a former conductor who was at Berlin until 2013, as you may remember Adam Gopnik saying at the beginning. And Lydia Tar has succeeded him. So she was elected to the position after he left. Now he retired, and we're going to learn that he is someone who may have had some impropriety with students, with orchestra members. And we've had a whole history of this in orchestral music in real life, and there's a lot of mentions of it in this scene. Whether it was James Levine in New York, I believe it was, or Boston, where he had to step down. Charles Dutoit had to step down for allegations of rape or sexual assault, violence, and in any case, either way. And other composers, and they're all male. And usually it's male composers because there are very, very few female conductors. It's usually male conductors, pardon me. I love the way they talk about music here. And this is exactly the place that Lydia would be in. Kind of this steakhouse type looking place. Although she wouldn't eat steak at all. She's a cucumber salad person, as we will learn. I really love the performance here by Julian Glover. And Cate Blanchett, we know, is excellent here. She's been brilliant in everything she does in her career. And she continues that with this film. I think it's the best performance she's ever given on film. You can tell this is a different man that she's sitting in front of. With Elliot earlier, she was more of a patronizing person. With Andris, she genuinely respects and admires him. And he basically taught her everything she knows, short of Leonard Bernstein. But these two people here are completely comfortable with each other, whereas Elliot wasn't quite comfortable with Lydia. Both of these people are comfortable with each other. Just by the way they're talking, just the silences and the pauses between them, and it's just really casual and it flows. Their conversation flows. Elliot wanted something from Lydia, but Andrus Davis doesn't need anything from Lydia. So she can really be herself with Andrus, because Andrus is someone who, again, is her mentor. And so he doesn't need anything from her. She might need something from him, but they talk about this private and personal failing. It's not clear whether that's relevant to his work, and they both laugh. It's kind of a very uncomfortable scene, actually, because they're talking about Schopenhauer, who wrote this book, a really epic tome about the will, W-I-L-L, and it's an incredible book. And Schopenhauer was someone who was misogynistic and racist and also anti-enslavement, if you can believe it. And he also threw a woman down the stairs, which is what Lydia was referring to in that last scene. That's another example. He's a German philosopher in the 18th century, I believe it was, 18th and 19th century. And so that is another example of Todd Field's great screenwriting, and he puts these conundrums into the mix, you know. Schopenhauer is someone who measured a man's intelligence in relationship to sensitivity to noise, and all throughout this movie we're talking about noise. I'm talking about dissonance. It's a very dissonant movie. All these things are clashing together in so many different ways, whether it's this whole conversation about the art and the artist, or whether it's about these sounds, these noises, the music. And again, we've got this moment here where all of the best artists have this inspiration through a sound that they hear. The best musicians do. And they'll hear a sound and it will be in their head, it gets stuck in their head, and then they have to rush over to a piano or somewhere else, some instrument, to play it and to just kind of mimic what they hear. And musicians mimic sounds, right? They mimic notes, they mimic things that they hear. And they put that down into song, they put that down into a music score and a composing score. Now we see Tar in her out of her element, running now. It's the first time in the movie really that we've not seen her either play music or listen to music or talk about music. This is a completely, kind of like, this is a bit more of an exposition really. It's a completely separate part of her life. She likes to run. And you're going to hear these sounds. And she's shocked by them. And you see her looking around. Where is that woman's voice coming from? It's a scream. It's a blood-curdling scream. You might hear it in a horror movie. And so here she's in this big open field, you know, and there's no one else there except her. She's dressed in black and she's running. And you hear this woman's voice. It's screaming. It's really blood-curdling and very uncomfortable. What is that voice? Where is that coming from? And we never ever get to see where it's coming from and who that voice belongs to. It's completely separate from this film in some ways, from what we've seen in the film. But then again, maybe there is a reason for that. Maybe there's this something else deeper going on. Maybe there's something that Lydia hears that we don't hear, or maybe something Lydia is internalizing. Maybe she's hearing something within herself. This film is so open to interpretation, and I love films like that, which is why one of the many reasons I love Tar. This will startle people when you first watch this, because she goes from just kind of trying things out, and in a few moments you're going to hear this very loud explosion of sound. And when I first saw it, it made me jump, and it makes a lot of people who see this film for the first time in the movie theater jump right here. Bang! And in a movie theater, that is so loud, it really makes you jump. And the reason I think that happens is it shows you this power, this strength of this conductor, and the power of music. And from rehearsal to bang, and it's an almighty sound. It's louder than it really should be, but it's designed to really emphasize the power that this person has as a conductor. And of course, Cate Blanchett, when she's not conducting, speaks German. I mean, she did it all in this film. And she speaks English and German, and kind of in mid-sentence sometimes here. And then she's also got to um, tell you, as a film goer, how much she knows about the form and about conducting. And she's just really on top of it here. But we will see these worlds blur. And again, I am not a believer in that you can separate these things. These are all part of who we are as human beings. I mean, while there's different facets of us as human beings, I don't believe there's this idea that you can separate the art from the artist. Because again, the artist who does these heinous things uses their work as the calling card to do the abusive thing they do. That's what the whole point is. And they would just be scumbuckets to begin with, without the credentials of their work. But they still would be scumbuckets anyway, as I say, with or without any so-called great work that they've done. This is really great. The music, by the way, is fantastic. Tar features excellent music. The score is by Hilda Gunnadottir, and she composed a lot of these pieces, and they're recording Gustav Mahler Symphony Number 5, and they're practicing it rather, and doing rehearsals for it, and Elgar as well, Edward Elgar. I mean, all these kinds of things are all being done. But it's just phenomenal, and you've got to buy that soundtrack, Mahler, Gunnadottir, and Elgar, which is inspired by this film. The soundtrack is available from Deutsche Grammophon, which is a legendary German recording outfit, a music label, right, that produces a lot of European classical music performances and artists on their label, their record label. And you notice there, Francesca has a drink ready for Lydia. Lydia is someone who I think is incredibly insecure as well. And Power does that too. I think it's even before she became powerful. I think she was a very insecure person. And I think that she still is a person who's got a lot of anxiety and insecurity. We've seen that earlier. And I think that maybe Power was a place for her to hide. A lot of insecure people, I think, hide behind power. And uneasy is the head that wears the crown. You've heard that saying before. Look again, we're further away from the rehearsal area, and this is in the Dresden Symphony Opera House, I believe, orchestra house in Germany. Look at Alan Corduna here as Sebastian. He's on his knees, right? Basically begging, beseech thee, begging Lydia Tar here to say that, look, I think that the clarinet's a little bit too much in this particular sequence. And look at him, he looks so nervous. And then Lydia's going to consult with both her wife on her right-hand side and on her left, her lover. And I think that Sharon knows that Francesca is Lydia's lover. I think she knows that, and she's putting up with it. And this film is about power and how people who don't have power accessorize power. And it's about people who know that they can challenge power or have a chance to and don't. And then it gives you this very uncomfortable overtone to the worst things in human history, whether it's enslavement, whether it is genociding of Native Americans, enslavement of black people, of Africans, or whether it's the Holocaust against Jewish people that was done by the Nazis in Germany and in Auschwitz and elsewhere in the 1930s and 40s. People in Germany who had the power to tell Hitler to go take a walk, but they never did. They never did. And Hitler was looked at as a joke until he was no longer a joke anymore. It's very frightening. But I don't think Todd Field is trying intentionally to get to that place, but I think he is throwing these things out there for your thought and interpretation. And I definitely think that one of them, and you'll see this later on, is an allusion to what power can do when it is unchecked and unchallenged. I'll come back to that later on. Lydia Tar is a dictator here in some ways. I mean, she knows what the rules are, but she is willing to break them and smash them to bits, to smithereens. And you see Newt here, who you see in a moment, played by Fabian Dürr, who actually is a member of, I think, the orchestra there in Berlin. He's a real life member. I don't know why I think he looks a little bit like Gustav Mahler. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong there. But he looks like someone who definitely does belong in an orchestra, and he really is in real life. So there you go. Now he's telling her, but we have to take this to a vote. And she's saying, no, I'm not taking it to a vote. It's entirely my decision, and you know that. Kind of a hint of dictatorship there, don't you think? Hello, hello. No democracy. And she'll talk about the lack of democracy later on when she talks to Petra. So there's a lot of deference and genuflection. And she speaks in German here. And then you see the silhouette of her as she runs through this tunnel. And wearing all black. I kind of just this way to see a different side of her. But kind of get this idea that she is running to just get away from things. But you can't outrun yourself. She's getting deferential treatment there. She got free magazines from that news agent, and who let her have these magazine articles and these magazines, and then she just ripped out the pages. So she is very narcissistic. There's no question. There's nothing wrong with keeping articles about yourself, but she's got loads of them, sundries she calls them. I mean, she's got loads of these articles about herself, loads of them. Watch again the entry into this frame here. Florian's camera's fixed, but watch how, boom, right there, the entry of Francesca, played by Nomi Melon. And you can see how exasperated and dismayed and worried and really concerned and sad Francesca is right now. And Lydia is saying, well, this is not the place. Well, she says it here now. This isn't the place, Francesca. Well, that's not what she's alluding to. But you can imagine that in a previous time there, they probably did have sex, the two of them. Or they may have just hugged each other for the night. Cell phones, I told you cell phones are going to be significant in this film. And here they are again. And so, Lydia is learning that Krista Taylor committed suicide, ended her own life. But this is not a response of someone who feels sad about this. This is the response of someone in power who doesn't want anything to be connected back to her. So she says, delete it, delete the rest, and the rest of those emails that Krista Taylor was sending. And then the rationalization. This is what narcissists do, especially malignant narcissists. They rationalize the bad behaviors that they have. Oh, she wasn't one of us. Don't worry about her. Forget about Krista Taylor. She wasn't one of us, You can't keep worrying about her. She's not here anymore. She's not one of us. She was cuckoo, whatever. Come on. The three of us were so close. But that was before she started making them up. See, I told you there was a love triangle going on between the three of them. Here's the manipulation. She had so much promise. Watch this with Lydia Tar now. Almost as much as you, and then she touches her like this. This is a complete manipulation, absolute manipulation by Lydia of Francesca. She's trying to butter Francesca up, but the fact of the matter is that it's a temporary reprieve before she really dispatches of Francesca, or rather, Francesca says, I've had enough of this BS. I'm out of here. I'm not going to prop up your power anymore. Because this film, again, as I said earlier, is a lot to do with not just power, but what people who don't have power do in the face of power. And look at Cate Blanchett here at the door. There'll be another shot like this toward the end of the film in a very, very far less sanguine way, I think. You'll find out what that shot is if you haven't already seen the movie. Look at these emails. Again, technology revealing to us what Lydia Tar is about, calling Krista a strange person, strange behavior. Can't recommend her. She's wholly unsuited. I must warn you, as you see there, of the danger to your orchestra. So she has sent letters around the world to orchestras who would probably have picked Krista Taylor and hired her in a heartbeat as a conductor, as a young conductor. But she's absolutely crushed all that, crushed her career, and now she's kind of maybe weighing it here in the shower. How nasty this is. And you don't see her. Her back is to you again here. And she's probably thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done? So there is some kind of remorse and reflection. There is some kind of armor that's been broken. It's kind of a very, there's an anomaly there with her. You see that she is not this highly confident person a lot of times, sometimes at least. I love this tune that you can probably hear. And you see that Sharon sits in the foreground, and look at the way Nina Hoss kind of has the eye roll going, and look at that. And then the quick subtle move with her eye, and then how she's weighing things. She's testing Lydia here, and she knows Lydia better than Lydia does, as I said earlier. And she's testing. You can see she's totally testing Lydia, waiting for the reaction. I think that Sharon knows exactly what Lydia is about. They have to. They've been together for 20 years. They know each other's next move. These are two chess masters here. And I think Sharon has the upper hand because I think she's trying to mine and search and test Lydia with some information about Olga Metkina, who is played by Sophie Carr, who's a real-life cellist. She's trying to sniff out what the next move of Lydia is. And I think that Lydia knows that here. And so she senses it. And watch this. Did you take your pill? Everything is a manipulation for Lydia Tar, even to the point of manipulating her own spouse. Oh, yeah, let me get off this subject of Olga Metkina, and I'm going to have you take your pill now. And then that tune you heard there, a lovely tune, it's by Johnny Burke and Jimmy Van Heusen. It's called Here's That Rainy Day. It's beautiful. It's also available on that soundtrack I was telling you about earlier, Mahler, Gunadotter, and Elgar. It's from Deutsche Grammophon, and it's inspired by and from the movie that you are now listening and watching, the movie Tar, which I think is a brilliant piece of film. It's sad that the film did not do very well in the United States and Canada when it was released in 2022. I don't know why. I don't want to belittle audiences and the intellectualism or lack thereof of some audiences of moviegoers, but this film just did not catch any traction. I don't know why. Whether it was the subject matter, whether it was the trailer, people couldn't figure out what was going on here. But this is Cate Blanchett, for goodness sakes. You should, if you're a Cate Blanchett fan or someone who respects Cate Blanchett's prolific and excellent work, you would see her in anything. I'd see her in a phone booth. But the audiences just didn't take to this particular film, which is a shame. There's that pattern again that's very haunting and creepy, the metronome we just saw there. But this film is really good. It made less than $5 million in the United States and Canada. Now look, how much money a movie makes does not measure how good or bad the movie is. There are lots of bad movies that make $200 million, and there are lots of good movies that make less than $5 million, and Tar happens to be in that latter category. Long after the box office has been forgotten about Tar, everyone will remember that this film was really good. At least everyone who sees it will say, or I am confident that they will say, that this film is really good, and that will endure beyond any lack of box office. I mean, most people don't think about a film like The Dark Knight, which grossed a lot of money, as the film that made X amount of millions of dollars. They think about The Dark Knight as an excellent film. And it is. rehearsal again here in Berlin. And now we've got Lydia, and we see Olga right in the center of the frame there that Florian puts her in. Boom. So there's this monologue going on between Lydia and Olga, played by Sophie Kauer, who also can be heard on the soundtrack that I was just talking about. Watch the way that Lydia trains eyes on Olga, and there is on the right side of that frame again is the wife observing her spouse. I'm telling you, this story is being told by the assistants and by Sharon. Just by the way they're placed in the frame. And look again at the top, at the back of that auditorium is Francesca. I'm telling you, she recorded that video that you're going to see later on. It's a very, very deft and subtle move that I talked about with the Juilliard sequence. But you're going to see this again, and I will point it out to you. We saw Nina Hoss looking up there as she's playing the violin. Watch this here and listen to this. Watch how she looks over at Olga, and then she sticks out her tongue very briefly toward Olga. It's very provocative and very inappropriate. Look right here. Ooh, boy. That's very unsettling and very uncomfortable. And you can see there, Sharon, boom, she looks over at Olga and looks back at her spouse, Lydia. And she can tell. And now look at the seduction. Now she's taking off her hairband, and she's letting her hair down. And that's a complete flirtation with her student Olga. That's so inappropriate with an orchestra member. Very inappropriate. That's a sexual harassment. That's really provocative. That is hostile workplace harassment. If it continues on, it definitely is that. And right there is her spouse watching it all. She's willing to do that right in front of her spouse, so she does not treat her spouse with respect. And note how she steals that pen from Sebastian in his office. Here comes the power play again. Here comes the manipulation. She's already talked about how Sebastian is annoying with his fetishes that are weird. That's what she said to Elliot at the lunch earlier in the film. And now look at her indulging and patronizing him before she attacks him. That's what narcissists do, especially malignant narcissists. They attack your weaknesses. They hold on to your weaknesses, and then when they're ready to unleash them back upon you, they do. Now, people do that in general, or some people do that in general, whether they're narcissistic or not. But that's a vulnerable place to be in, and a malignant narcissist, easy for me to say, can unleash that kind of vengeance on you by hitting you with your own insecurities. It's a devastating thing to have done to you. It really is. Now she's telling Sebastian that he's done, and she's rotating him out of the Berlin Symphony Orchestra as in the position he was in. He has to now find another home. And her word is bond. She's patronizing him. She's trying to let him down gently. And there's that tap on the shoulder. You'll see that happen again with other characters that she does this to before she really crushes them. And now here comes Sebastian, who had been so nervous and intimidated before. And now he's fighting back here about how he knows that when this girl, he's referring to Francesca, showed up, he knew that his days were numbered. And so now she tried to let him down gently. And now that he's challenged her, she's going to go in for the kill, which she probably wanted to do anyway from the beginning. And now Sebastian's given her that opening to be very, very manipulative and to really jettison him now and dump him at the side of the road. And now he's begging for forgiveness, and he's crying out and, oh, I'm so sorry. And he's not sorry. He wanted to challenge her here. And now she's going to just let him go. Now he's begging again. Your monogamy. Now he mishears that as misogynist, but it's misogamy, which is someone who has a hatred of marriage. And now she, boom, drops that hammer at the insecurity there. And you occupy an apartment on the same floor as Andrus, don't you? Andrus is gay. He is married. And apparently Andres and Sebastian may have been lovers. And Andres is married now. And Sebastian is still got an apartment on the same floor. So that gives you this implication that maybe he is still in love with Andres. But Lydia is someone who unleashes the weaknesses. And a malignant narcissist, because I think that is what Lydia is, does that to you. Absolves her own behavior and then drops these vulnerable points about oneself on them. Notice Sharon here in their kitchen is wearing the same clothing that her wife Lydia wears, and sometimes that she wears as well. This kind of two-ness. Sharon's in a position to really point things out to Lydia and tell her to take a hike, but she doesn't do that. And again, this film is about power and the people who don't have it as well, and what their role is in propping up someone who does have power. Notice the distance here between the two characters. Lydia seated at a power table, and then on this couch that you might find in a waiting room is Francesca on her laptop. And watch how Cate Blanchett kind of flutters her eye right there over at Lydia, at Francesca, and then lies and says, "Oh, my laptop's having a problem here. I called IT. Can I have your laptop?" And watch again, you see how manipulative Lydia is. And Francesca knows that this is not good news. And watch, she's going to provide the distraction again. Where's the matcha? This coffee. She goes for it now. And watch her look. Boom. Look right up at Francesca. Leave. Boom. Now I'm going to go into the laptop and I'm going to find out what emails are in here. And you see all these emails from Krista who ended her life. Look at this. This was desperation. And remember I told you that she says, anybody's capable of murder. And then there's a line in there that you just saw from those emails that said, Tar wants me dead. And I certainly think that that's true. She says it very knowingly to that flirtatious student after the lecture with Adam Gopnik, when she talks about, I realize that anyone's capable of murder. And she's talking about herself. You just saw Lydia boxing. Now she doesn't want the coffee anymore, the matcha. She doesn't want it anymore. And that was a diversion. She never wanted the matcha. She just wanted to get Francesca out of the room long enough. I love that lighting at the back there. Long enough so that she could then look on her laptop. And now she's going to go ask her, did you delete all this stuff? So she's now testing Francesca. And Francesca, knowing that she may have looked at her emails, is now trying to play it cool. Well, I'm not sure. And watch this shot here. Whoa. Whoa. See? That is a really good answer from Francesca. And watch her eyes light up here, Francesca. When she realized, look at that, she can't believe her eyes are wide there. She can't believe that. What? Sebastian's gone? Look at her. She knows now that she might be in line for this position. Watch how Naomi Merlant does a really good job in this film. Look at how everything is so internal. Everything with the performance. And she's telling the story. Watch again the manipulation here. Look at the shot. Look at the eyes. Cate Blanchett. Boom, boom. There you go. Now let's see what she's about. Boom. This is about Olga now. She's talking about, I'll have lunch with her. And that is all about playing Francesca. She's putting Francesca on a string right there. That's what she's doing. And powerful people do this, even if they're not powerful people. People do this. They manipulate people for their own ends, to keep them off balance and to keep them under their spell, and also to intimidate them. It's a power play. And Lydia is adept at power play. She's done it for a long time while she's been at this Berlin Symphony Orchestra. There's a contrast between Olga here, played by Sophie Carrer, and Lydia, played by Cate Blanchett. And there's a gulf in generation between them. And it suggests an opportunity for, very disturbing opportunity for Lydia to bore in on someone who doesn't look like she's a day older than maybe 18 or 19, if that. She's very young. That so-called adage that you've heard called barely legal, which I think at some point was some kind of, might have been some kind of pornographic publication or something. But it's very unsettling, is the point I'm making. It's all terribly unsettling and disturbing. And you'll see that later on, that this person is a predator. I mean, Lydia Tar is somebody who is a musician and a conductor and a predator. I just love how she just grabs the bread here. Olga, she's kind of untutored and she's just, rough around the edges. And, this is the first time she's having a meal with another woman. Usually we've seen meetings across tables with men in this film that Lydia has meetings with. Now it's a meeting with another female, and this person is significantly younger than her. But you can tell how there's a big gulf in generation. And she talks about YouTube in a few moments' time, does Olga. Whereas, of course, Cate Blanchett's more of a vinyl person. We saw all the vinyl records scattered about the floor at the beginning of the movie. So you're going to see, here you're going to hear the character played by Sophie Cowher talking about how I can text this to you, I can text that to you. YouTube is where I played, and you can see it on YouTube, And she hates YouTube. I mean, the thing is, Lydia hates YouTube. She calls people robots. She doesn't like technology. She's not a big fan of it. She's an old school person. She was born in the early 70s. So she certainly would not have been someone who perhaps was in love with the internet. She is much more adept to records and vinyls. And look at the seduction here. She's turned on by this 19 or 20-year-old. Oh my goodness, it's so inappropriate and gross. It's inappropriate whether a man does it, and it's inappropriate whether a woman does it. It doesn't matter who, it's just disgusting. And this is a younger looking Sophie Cowher, and they probably did a good job. They did do a good job in the costume department. They just simply probably put a wig on her, and then they put, you can see it's a wig, and then they put, they dressed her in this outfit that makes her look a whole lot more, I guess, I don't know, childlike. And you see how Lydia's turned on here. You can see it, how she's got her fingers, she's stroking her lips with her finger. Very sensual act. And you can tell how she's turned on here by what she's listening to. And she appreciates the musicianship, but she's also turned on by this. And this is her at 13. This is what is really disturbing, is that YouTube video shows her at 13 years of age. Now here we go with this thing about the papers, and this kind of evokes this 1940s Nazi Germany thing. Have you seen the papers, the delivery, the papers? And that's what Hitler would talk about, papers, to see whether someone was Jewish or not, or it was just horrifying. And so there's that echo that's being brought into this film, I think, for the first time, about, have you seen my mother's newspaper delivery, these papers? Sound plays a big role in this movie, as I've said, and here we are again with sounds and how Cate Blanchett's character is trying to orient herself to this sound that she can try to hear. And at night, sound is much more clear and discreet. You can hear it much more easily. And so, as you can tell, this is kind of an early morning, late night scene there, and she's kind of finding out where the source of sound is coming from, this ambient noise. And now we see her in a different running position from behind. We're watching her, and we see here, look at Francesca, she's almost crying. She's got water in her eyes, basically. She looks either exhausted or sad or at wit's end. She's lost Krista, who she loves very much, and now we've got Lydia, who really doesn't seem to care too much, and you've got Olga there, you just saw, and you have Sharon, who you just saw as well. I love this. the final note just plays out until you just can't hear it anymore. And look at Lydia here. Wow. She says beautiful right here. Beautiful. Yeah, that was really good. It really was. Here comes another manipulation by someone in power. Lydia Tar is going to now throw this random proposal out about having the orchestra play with a lead cellist, Elgar. And now you see that Olga's curiosity has been piqued. And look at the way she's looking over at Olga, and look at the way that Sharon's registering this. She's trying to think about where this is all going. And now the orchestra feels the same way, but they're beginning to warm to it. But this is really a powerful scene. And these are all, many of these people that you see here are actual members of the orchestra at Berlin, Dresden. And certainly you see a couple of them. As I said, Fabian Dier, and also you'll see someone named Gosha, who is played by Dorothea Plains-Casal. And you'll see her facial expressions are very powerful here. Watch this, Nina Hoss, and there's Dorothea Plains-Casal as Gosha. Here you go. Her facial expressions are unforgettable in this sequence here, as are Nina Hoss's. Here comes the manipulation, and look at the back there, the assistant again, Francesca in the distant background. There's a constant theme there with her in the background, telling the story. Look at this. Look at Nina Hoss. Ooh, look at the rest of the orchestra react, and look at Sophie Kara as Olga. Wow, look at I gotta tell you, that's really powerful from Dorothea Plains-Casal. Gosha here, who she plays, has got these facial expressions. She knows this isn't right, what Lydia is asking of her, to, take down a position that she normally plays and give it to someone else for an audition. Look at this. Watch this. Look at her face. She's trying to stop herself from saying what's right. And look at the other woman next to her flaring her eyes and raising her eyebrows. And look at Nina Hoss there. Oh my God. Sharon is absolutely livid and shocked. And now look at this. And now she's going, what? What is she doing? And look at Nina Hoss there. And watch her again here. Ooh, my God, that look is so incredibly powerful and unsettling. Because they all know that Lydia Tar has gone too far. And none of them says anything to stop her. And that's where the frightening thing is about power. If you don't challenge it, if you leave it unchecked, it does the kinds of things that lead to that lead to what Hitler did to Jewish people. The extermination of 6 million Jewish people. And I'm not obviously not likening what happens in that scene you just saw to what Hitler did. Of course I'm not. What I'm saying is that the so-called good German who refuses to challenge power, that failure sends us down this garden path that becomes ever more bloody. That's the point I'm making, is that when you don't challenge power, it can do these very destructive and dangerous and devastating things to people. And that's what you've just seen here, in a very different scope and scale, obviously, from what happened in Nazi Germany. For no second am I ever comparing these two things. What I am looking at is how power, left unchecked, can do things that make people deeply uncomfortable. And all of them reacted once she left the room. And they all know, that orchestra knows what she did there was not right. They know that Gosha is someone who is capable of doing that cello for Elgar, and yet she's completely brushed her off as Lydia because she wants Olga to get that position. It's a complete power play. It truly is. And so is this part here. She's acting all the innocent in this sequence with Britta. I forgot who plays Britta. Britta is the character who has come in to tell her this news about Krista Taylor, which she already knew. But then she's going to act like she doesn't know. She's going to play it like she's playing dumb. And then she's going to find out what this is. This is about process and how process is being employed to start this snowball against Lydia Tar, who is now going to start to find life a little less comfortable than she thought it was. Now she's fishing. Accusations. What kind of accusations? You know what? I suddenly think, though, with a movie like this and all these seats are empty, there's this vastness and intimacy at the same time. And now we see the confining of space here. This asymmetrical room now places Lydia Tar isolated. And she is really, I think, truncated here in some ways. And then in the foreground, you see a magazine, right, with her picture on it on the cover versus the actual Lydia Tar who's live in front of us there. And there's a gulf between those two. And you see the way that shot kind of lines up. There's an alignment there. Florian Hofmeister's camera work is so good. And now we see the reveal, right, that Krista Taylor took her own life. They say unexpectedly, but there she is. That's the same redhead that we saw at the beginning. We saw her looking at this from the sides of this film, and we saw that Lydia doesn't want anything to do with her, and now we see that she's dead, or we find out that she's ended her life. Here's this another shot with Andres, and we see now the reverse shot now, in a different moment, different angle, right? And they're talking about the stuff that's going on with Berlin and Sebastian. He used to have I suspect they had an affair, Andres and Sebastian. But this is all power talk. She feels she can confide in Andres. Andres is someone that she's comfortable talking to. As I said, she doesn't try to manipulate him because she knows that she really can't do that. He's the master, and he's someone who really gave her first break, and she studied under him. And so, she's just now fishing. She's not fishing, but she just wants some guidance and advice. And now he's kind of thinking that he's worried about his own position, but he's out of the game, as he says. In other words, this is a game. This is kind of a scenario. And he talks about Jimmy Levine and Charles de Troyes, as I've said before. These are conductors who ended up leaving their positions because there was scandal around them, some accusations around them that were very, very serious. And then he starts to talk about accusal today is the same as being guilty. Well, and that's open to interpretation. It depends on who you mean, because if it's someone black in this racist society, that would be accurate. But if you're someone who is white, perhaps maybe less so, I would say. But you never know. I never played under Furtwängler. Furtwängler is a German composer in Nazi Germany who was an anti-Nazi. You have to read up on him. It's a fascinating story. He never would ever adhere to Hitler, and Hitler knew that he was anti-Nazi, and yet Hitler happened to like him as a composer and declared him his favorite composer, Furtwängler, and Furtwängler was anti-Hitler and anti-Nazi, and he would not even sign his letters Heil Hitler. God, I hate the fact that I even just said that word. And Andres is talking about all this, but you've got to study this guy, Furtwängler, Furtwangler. He's a fascinating figure, someone who played at Hitler's request, a composer, but never adhered to Hitler at all, was vehemently, openly anti-Nazi, and yet this was Hitler's favorite composer. I mean, really, it goes to show you this kind of dissonance and collision between different things about people that collide together. And now we see this shot again here of Nina Hoss being closer to the camera than Lydia Tar. This story is not being authored by Lydia Tar. It's being authored by the people around her, the people who didn't speak up in power, against power. And there, again, Nina Hoss is testing, I think, Lydia here, or just listening to her. But you see how she's judging her silently here. Her own spouse, Sharon, played by Nina Hoss, is testing Lydia here. And again, it's people like Sharon and people like Francesca, who are telling the story here, and Krista, who are telling the story about this particular person named Lydia Tar. They're all listening to the auditions. I think we know what's going to happen here next. Cate Blanchett's got that really fixed look on her face there. She's trying to discern what that noise is that's being played. One of the auditioners. And you see that they're liking this second audition. The music is soothing and lovely and wonderful and beautiful. And you see Nina Hoss here processing what she's hearing. And then you see Cate Blanchett also processing what she's hearing. Look at her face here. She already is feeling this music deep in her soul. That black shirt, I like that black blouse she's wearing. And then look, she knows who that is, I think. And I think we will find out who it is in a second. Francesca now is just completely, again, she's part of the shot here, but she already knows what's going down. She's a step ahead of everybody, except for Lydia Tar. Now you see how Sharon enables her partner there, her wife there. Sharon says to Goshen, let's talk. And really, the young woman, Olga, should not be allowed to even be in this because she is not an orchestra member. But Sharon did the wrong thing to accommodate her wife and said, okay, no, let's talk. So Sharon probably leaned on Gosha or talked to her, and they made a decision that this young woman, who's not a part of the orchestra, should be the cellist. And Sharon's doing that unselfishly for her wife, Lydia. So Sharon is actually an accessory to this affair that her wife is having with Olga. Doing it to her own detriment is Sharon. So this is again about how people who don't have power react to it and also accommodate and prop it up. And that's a powerful example of it that we just saw there a few moments ago with Sharon saying, oh, I've got to talk to Gosha here. Let's just hold off on inviting Martin in because, she's doing this as a favor to her wife, even though she suspects that her wife is probably having an affair with Olga as well. This is the separate apartment that you've seen before that Lydia keeps. And I suspect it's not just a pad for her to work quietly in where she can develop her music, but I also think it's a place where she cheats with her lovers. I think that that's got to be where that's going. I love how Sophie Carr starts out in relative silhouette there, and then she comes in, and there's a foreshadowing there about what's going to happen with Lydia based on stuff like this. And you see how this younger person just barges in to Lydia's house and really is a little bit, again, as I said earlier, untutored in the ways of diplomacy. And younger people tend to be a bit more open and honest and brash than older people do or adults do, right? Older adults. I mean, not that they're not honest, but younger people will tell you what's on their mind, many of them. Not all of them, but some of them will. They're much more upfront with their sentiments about things. And the body language that Olga demonstrates here, she's very much oblivious to what the language is and what the conventions are and what the rules are. She just runs through them, runs through the stop signs, and she just does what she wants to do. And not in any malicious way, but in a way that's so much as kind of discovery and also this feeling of being alive. I think that Sophie Carr's character, Olga, is someone who's very alive and in the moment. And so Olga is an in the moment type of person, and she's demonstrating that here with a number of the different things that she's doing. She's much more open, more so I think than Lydia Tar ever will be. She's very confident. You saw the way she just kind of had at that bread in their lunchtime meeting when they were eating with, and you just saw the confidence in Olga, and now she's taking that on to a step beyond with the piano playing that she's doing. Here's more confidence. This is the first time that Olga's in the apartment of Lydia, and now she's telling Lydia, hey, this sounds much better than what you were just playing. She plays this note. It's better in B flat, I think she said. Now, this is really curious because I don't know whether this represents a fantasy sequence or not, right? Well, we'll find out because that is so. I can't believe that someone lives there. I mean, I'm probably being extremely naive, right? But I'll get back to that. You'll find out why I talk about that in a few minutes' time. I love how this particular person here, and I don't even know, I don't even remember who she is. I think she's the mother of Sharon and Sharon's sister. And she says that the child is in its room. It's kind of a comedy moment there, in its room, not in her room. And so here's this orchestra that Petra's put out there with a, and then you see this bizarre image again, as that kind of, that pattern. I forgot what that's called, but it's very unsettling, I think, to look at that. It's just the way that that's arranged throughout. It's kind of the secret language. Or it looks very labyrinthian, very much so. That's an image from another movie. That's a shot from, I forget which movie. It's an homage to that filmmaker in that movie where you have it's kind of like that. It's an homage to that painting, actually, Two Lovers. That's what it is. Where you have the lovers covered with a blanket or curtain over their faces. So it's an homage to that painting, not a movie, a painting called The Lovers. I think it's called The Lovers or Two Lovers, and I forget who painted it, but it's a great painting. And there's this sheet that goes over the lovers, over one of the persons or both of their faces, and that homage was definitely done there by Todd Field. And you see now the positioning of Olga. She's right at the front, right in front of everybody. I mean, this is so blatant. I mean, she's doing this in front of everyone, and you can see how Gosha there is really ticked off, pissed off. And look at Sophie Cara here as Olga, real life cellist Sophie Cara, and look at this, and look at the way that Sharon notices Lydia's reaction to Olga playing here for Elgar. This is really, really good, this sequence here. Wow. Love that. And look at this. Gosh is humiliated. She's jealous. She doesn't like it, resents it. And look at that. Right in front of the wife. Look at Sharon putting up with that too. Right in her face, touching her face and saying, hey, that's good. Yeah, good. Touching her. Do you like it? You happy? Right in front of her. I mean, dude, this is what she's putting up with. And she is furious that Nina Hoss, I don't know how she does it. Nina Hoss is so good. I mean, that character Sharon's putting up with that. You're going to take that, Sharon? You're going to take it? You're going to take it? Seriously, though. I mean, that is really right in her face. Shows you I don't know how she could be married to her for 20 years or be with her for 20 years, but there are people in relationships who put up with stuff like this, who know that this is wrong, but they love the person and they deal with all the BS, such as cheating on them in front of their face, emotionally so. It's just brutal. Here's that match shot again of earlier where she's walking through here, and now she realizes after she's got this deposition, Francesca has dropped the bomb, and Francesca says, I'm out, like Shark Tank. I'm out. And so she's done and didn't tell Lydia. See that poster on the side there, on the right-hand side on the wall? Of Lydia Tar. And now you've got a different kind of Lydia Tar. I think Lydia Tar here thinks that she's probably Michael Schumacher driving this car. And she, by the way, Cate Blanchett studied and practiced driving cars really fast, and she almost smashes into a rigged car there. And you see Sharon is horrified. "Let me out of here," she says. And look at the expressions. I love these expressions by Nina Haas, from Nina Haas. Look at that. She just stares at her and just slams the door. And then she just drives off really fast as well. And now here she comes, all dressed in black. She's dressed to kill, and she's ready to go. And now she wants to know where on earth her assistant and her lover, Francesca, is. There's that mirror, the kind of reflection there in the glass. She's looking around like, what happened to this? Where is she? And look at all this stuff here. And you see these pages of a book, a manuscript, and these look like manuscripts that were done. They were either rough drafts, and look at that, rat on rat. That's so funny. So that's the anagram to tar, like that's the reverse of it, and you just switch those letters around backwards. It's tar is rat, which I think is really funny and interesting. Look at this. Wow, the very haunting moment here. This free associational imagery and the kind of this Hall of Mirrors effect. Very powerful. But it kind of symbolizes what's going on inside of Lydia Tar. And look at this shot, kind of very Terrence Malick type of shot here. Watch that fire burning as Tar lies there in an Amazon forest. That, and then she wakes up dreaming. That's a shaman. And I think I talked about it earlier. Elisa Vargas Fernandez sang that Ikaru earlier, and she's a shaman in the Amazon in South America. And so what you're seeing there is kind of like a shot in the rainforest, and you saw a shaman in that shot, in that sequence of the Hall of Mirrors kind of sequence. Really good sequence there. I would have loved to have seen more of that, but again, Todd Field, and I'll talk about him again later. He shot some of this for his trailer. Now look at this. You saw that kind of orange, fiery type thing in the background there as she's walking in, and look at this. This woman on the floor here looks like she could have been someone who tried to escape from Hitler's camp. That's exactly what I saw and thought, rather. Is exactly what I thought when I first saw this movie. That this woman could have been someone trying to escape from, say, Treblinka or from Auschwitz, naked. I mean, literally, bone thin, naked, and running. Literally someone who might have been running. And now, this proximity of Lydia to this, it just evokes this kind of thing from Nazi Germany. And now she's just wanting to get herself clean of anything to do with that, and so she's just cleaning her naked self down here in this long lens, and she's in the distance there, and she's got so much going on, and she's got to run and put something on, and then she's got to answer the door. All these different sounds, whether it was the sound of water rushing through the tap, or whether it's the banging or the pounding on the door, all these noises are converging. And you see that shot, that painting, that artwork of Lydia and the shaman there on the wall, and she just walked past it there. Now she's lying when she says she doesn't normally live there. She does. She goes there to play music and to bring her lovers in. That's what happens. You can tell this has got this feel of a love story right here, right there. I want a towel. Her hair is wet, and it's kind of got this romantic feel there. And look, she's got this bed. She's kind of opening the bedspread. It's kind of what you'll see later on when Cate Blanchett's character is in Thailand, where these bed sheets get lifted and rustled. And there's kind of a very suggestive thing there with the bed and the proximity to it, that Tar standing over it. And then in the foreground, you've got Olga, the student, who is sitting there with wet hair. And like there's a suggestiveness there that's very strong and obvious, and also very haunting and disturbing, because then the implication is that she'll have sex with another one of her students / radio and orchestra members very inappropriate. She's kissed her, and she's walking away, and now she's basking in that, because that's what she really wants from this 20-year-old or 19-year-old. And now Olga's left her teddy bear, and it's kind of that reinforcing of innocence. The idea that that teddy bear has been left there means that Olga has left her innocence at the door, at the car door of Lydia Tar. And Lydia Tar picks up that bear, and it's kind of a reminder to the audience that there's innocence here that you are taking away, because you are now crossing the Rubicon with a 19 or 18 or God knows how young she is, student or really orchestra member, that you really shouldn't be doing this with. This is sexual harassment. It's inappropriate. It's a working relationship. It's very, very inappropriate indeed. It's unsettling, and it, quite frankly, it's criminality when you think about it. When you really think it's bordering right on that, it really is. I think it is. Now we see again that kind of ferocious, blonde, kind of platinum-looking mane of hair. Even though we know that the character is someone who's dirty blonde. And now we see something that's kind of separate again from the film. This is kind of a separate thing from this movie, where you've got Cate Blanchett's character Lydia walking around in this place that is a maze. It's incomplete. Nobody could possibly live here in those conditions. Olga is nowhere to be seen. She's disappeared. And I wonder if this is just kind of a dream sequence, or if it's the channels of the mind, the mindset of Lydia now, who just completely doesn't know where Olga is. Where did Olga go? Was she a figment of Lydia's imagination? What was going on here? Surely, surely, surely Olga didn't disappear that far. And now there's this, what looks like a dog, a half dog and a half whatever, in the distance, and it's really quite unsettling. And you can see that Lydia is unsettled by it, and she's scared and she's panicked, and now she's going to run away and get out of there. And she's going to turn up those steps, and she's going to have this very, very nasty bang right there. And usually in an audience, the sound effect of that is so horrible that the audience gasps in horror, and then followed by this shattering of glass, or ice rather, by a rolling pin. And you see this really bloodied face of this person, and she's going to lie here. She's going to lie and say that she was attacked, which she really was not, of course. She tripped, because this dog that she saw, or thought she saw, that we definitely saw, scared her to death, and she ran away, tripping on the stairs. That's what happened. And she'll admit that she trips to her doctor. She'll tell her doctor that coming up in a few moments. But you see Petra here saying that Lydia is the most beautiful person I know. And there's a real irony to that, because she's anything but beautiful in that way. She's very destructive and manipulative. There is a very tenuous relationship between Lydia and Petra, her child with Sharon. Very, very, very tenuous relationship. I love the affectionate moments. Hold my foot, says Petra. I love that. It's just really kind-hearted, and it's just this bit about love that we do. You know, when we have these insecurities and these vulnerabilities, and we just want our partner to maybe rub our stomach or rub our back or massage us or hold my foot, hold our foot, hold our feet. Maybe that's what that is too. That's genuinely nice moment. Now we can see the orchestra getting ready to rehearse, and then we're going to see some faces looking fairly startled. Gosh, you're right there. Dorothea Plains Cazal. Look at Sophie Carra, and look at Nina Hoss. Nina Hoss already knows what this is. She has a step of, and then she is in the right side of the frame that she popped in. She already knows what's coming here, because she lives with Lydia. And of course, right here, this is a preemptive strike by Lydia to the audience. The orchestra, rather. I don't think that orchestra really likes her very much. That would be my guess. Now, she's lying again here saying that she was attacked. She was not attacked. And then she goes, well, you should see the other guy. Well, the other guy was a dog. And she ran from a dog and tripped over the steps. And Who would want to admit that they ran from a dog and tripped on the steps and smashed their face? Not many people would tell the truth about that, would they? I think I would. But would you? This is the rehearsal of Mahler Symphony 5. I urge you to go listen to that. It's phenomenal. Gustav Mahler, really, really good stuff. I'm a big fan of European classical music, and I just love this movie. And it wasn't because of that I loved it. It was because of a lot of other things which I've been talking about here. Now, there again on the right side of the frame is Nina Hoss. And again, this story is being told by the Nina Hoss character, Sharon Goodnow, and it's also being told by Francesca Lentini, played by Nomi Merlant, and also being told by Krista Taylor, played by Sylvia Foote. I mean, those are the three main people who are telling the story of Lydia Tar. Lydia Tar is not telling the story about herself. Now, in her book Tar on Tar, which is a fictional book she may have done, but not in this real life scenario. I mean, this character is cultivated so well that I thought that it was a real character, and I really, was stunned when a real life person, when I found out that Lydia Tar was not a real life person at all. And that goes to the great writing of Todd Field. Now she fell. Now she admits to the doctor, of course, she tells the truth to the doctor that she fell. She says that she fell asleep by the pool. Now, we don't know if we don't know if she's, put it this way. Let me put it this way. Let me scratch that. Cate Blanchett just misunderstood what the doctor says there. She thought he said nostalgia paresthetica. It was notalgia paresthetica. And it's the second time in the film where there's been a misunderstanding, and it involved Lydia Tar. The first time it was when Sebastian thought that Lydia Tar was telling him that he is a misogynist, when she said, no, you are a misogamist. And so it's about how we hear and interpret things, and that includes voices. And now, in the scene you just saw with the doctor, Lydia thought that the doctor said nostalgia paresthetica. In fact, it's notalgia, and he corrects her and says notalgia paresthetica. And you can go look that up. It's a really painful condition in your back and in your shoulder blades, and it's made worse when you itch. It's very painful. I've never had this, but from what I understand, it's very painful indeed. Watch this video. This is got to be shot by Francesca. See? I mean, these angles are a little bit off, but definitely, but then you wonder who shot this stuff at the front. See, that's what's so interesting, because clearly at the back it looked like Nomi Merlant's character, Francesca, had this cell phone and she was recording it. But who was recording the front? It's just, and maybe they did do some doctors of this, but it's just incredible. But I do believe that video was put together by, I definitely believe it was put together by Nomi Merlant as Francesca. And by the way, see this body bag coming out here? This is really revealing, because that's the dead body of the woman whom she helped, who I said could have been a Holocaust escapee for all we know. And then we see she looks wordlessly at the woman who told her to come and help me. It's just really unreal. And here's another instance where power really fails to hold power to account. Now, granted, this is her team here around the table, but what we're seeing here also is a lack of pushback by the company, which they should kind of keep her honest here, and they don't. They indulge every whim of hers. Or I've got to go to New York for a deposition and my book tour or my book signing. And the thing is, you've got more important things than a book signing, baby. You've got to deal with all this stuff around these allegations around Krista Taylor and all the rest of it. You can't just breeze out of here, and that she does. And they let her as well. And they say that they didn't have a response because they want to discuss strategy. And that's what power brokers and power people do. But you've still left your biggest powerhouse at big exposure by not doing anything to warn her about how dangerous this conduct is. They've completely indulged her here. And they're all talking. This is a shot that reminds me of the shot in 2001, A Space Odyssey, where there's a long lens or a long shot, and you barely hear what's being said, and there's a big conference table, and the speaker is at the very far end of that table. This is another influence of Todd Field, which is Kubrick, excuse me. And this shot, though, is not as far back as or exaggerated as that one, but it does give you a sense of power and how power does or doesn't do things to help people who are in power. And we see it right here. And my goodness me, it's loads of issues here that this raises. And someone's asked her, well, should you have told Sharon? Yeah, of course you should have. She doesn't, though. And Sharon has to find it out from some third party, which of course is not going to make Sharon very happy. She talks about this book launch and this deposition, and then she just breezes out of there. And they just let her too. And they've totally appeased power at this point, and it's already a fail. So they can't even rein her in, and they're on her team. So that's what happens with dictators. You can't rein them in, because once they've got power, they can do anything with it. And we've seen that in Nazi Germany and elsewhere. And again, Lydia Tar is behaving more like an authoritarian and a dictator than she is a conductor who has any respect for the rules, or more importantly, for people at large who she works with and deals with. I love the fact that she's realized here that, oh my goodness, the Marvelous Fifth has gone missing. I don't have the script music. I don't have any of it. I need to find out where this is. And now, for the first time in a little while, she's very unmoored here. She doesn't have her bearings. And this is what having a deposition against you will do, and allegations against you will do. And so now she's trying to, I think, grasp at some important straws to try to offset anything. And wardrobe will do that. If you're in trouble with a deposition or with a court case or something, sometimes how you look makes a difference. Really, the attire that you wear in a courtroom can mean everything. Can be the difference between winning and losing a conviction on something. Now this jet, this looks like a commercial out of NetJets or something like that. Private plane, private jet. Again, look how orderly that is. It's kind of like a Kubrick shot. And we see that Cate Blanchett's there. And now we're waiting for an assistant to come, which probably will be Olga. And there we go. And now they're in New York. And there's the dark glasses, and she comes in, and here's the deposition. And here she is, a profile shot here. And this attorney's really dressing her down. I think this is the first time in the film, though, she gets really dressed down. I really, really do. I can't think of any other time that this has happened like this. And look how emotionless in profile that Cate Blanchett is. She's just blinking. And now here she comes in. Now this is the shot that kind of looks like the shot that we just saw earlier when she walked into Sebastian's office, and now she's walking into Elliot's office, and it's a different type of interaction than it was at the lunch table. Elliot has the upper hand here now, and he knows it. He's like, well, this is the last time we see each other. Well, now I can buy my own plane tickets. And now there she goes. She sticks the knife in him, crying, teach you to crawl to the podium. Well, you see, that's what happened, because I told you at the beginning that she completely humored Elliot and patronized him and kind of, disdained him, despised him, really. But she was totally being patronizing to him. And now she's just dropped the hammer like malignant narcissists do, and gonna just really crush him with this information about himself that's probably vulnerable. Now this book reading, the joyful noises we make, maybe the closest ever we might ever experience to the divine. And she's talking about music and sound and you know, Bernstein. And now look at this again. Now look, this is really something. And who are those assistants? Obviously, it's not Francesca. It's probably Olga and someone else. Might be Olga and Francesca. Who knows? Olga is in one place and Francesca is probably way in another place in a completely different area, not even in the same building. Who knows? There she is in a hotel room. Francie Pants NYC. I wonder if that's an actual real Twitter handle. I suspect it's not. And there's video, again, video and cell phone video playing an important role. And here's the cell phone again, and your wife is calling you, Lydia. Pick up, pick up, pick up. Oh, Lydia. But of course she's not going to pick up. She's going to ignore it. And she will then call for some water and all the rest of it. And she's living in her own function of an own world now. And she's lost grip. She's lost a real grip on things because you can see that now she is looking for the creature comforts that she was so used to, and now it's taking an extra long time for the water to come up to her room. There, Olga is now going out to the ballroom or wherever for dancing. She lied earlier and said, "Oh no, I'm going to go and have a late night, an early night." But she lied. She doesn't want to be anywhere near Lydia Tar. And there's another cell phone, and there is Olga yet again on it, much to the disdain of the less tech savvy and tech conscious Lydia Tar. Or maybe not. This is a kind of a cheat scene here because you see that it is now Nina Hoss who has startled Cate Blanchett. And and this is usually not what you see in a film like this because, again, when there's a protagonist, that you don't really have this kind of a scene as against all the others you've seen here, unless you are trying to say something larger, and that there's a significance here because, again, this film was not told to you by Lydia. This film is a story being told to you in the hands of, people who have worked with Lydia Tar, whether it is Nomi Merlant, who plays Francesca, whether it is Sharon, you see the distance between them there, played by Nina Hoss, whether it is Krista, played by Sylvia Foote. This is who is telling the story. It is not Lydia's story to tell. I love this swing here, how the camera swings around to Nina Hoss. So now we're seeing this reveal in how Sharon is just telling and reminding Cate Blanchett's character, Lydia, and also telling us that, this is the kind of thing she's dealing with, and, that there's a lot of stuff going on that, she's not going to abide by. And now you see the expression of Cate Blanchett's, she was really shocked here because she's saying she will take the kids away from her and have custody to herself. That's very, very possible. And Nina Hoss, as Sharon's doing the right thing here, she's saying, look, you're so worried about this other stuff that your proclivity to let me know that there's some danger here is completely off center and you can't do this. And Nina Hoss is the real adult here. Sharon's the real adult in the room here, and I think that's the truth. I think there's somewhere, and I think Todd Field said this recently when he was visiting San Francisco here, saying that in some ways Lydia is still a child. She was someone who probably suffered a loss in her life from one of her parents at a very early age, and I agree that certainly. I think Lydia is someone who is still very childlike and naive with power, and certainly her protocol and her behavior. And some people, like her wife Sharon, see through her and see her for the person that she is or isn't. And so, these are very, very serious scenarios. And look at this. I love this shot here. It's kind of a flashback to 2010, excuse me, to 2001, a space 2001 Space Odyssey, or to some other futuristic endeavor. And it really looks really great. Now there's Andrus there with his hat on, then he tips his hat off, and then he goes. So they've already kind of sent their message about Lydia. She now realizes here that the whole board is assembled. Ooh boy. And now there is no escaping here. And here's Lydia sitting in the same orchestra hall in Dresden, and she's just sitting there. She's got no one to bounce ideas off of because this is no longer her show. This story wasn't hers to begin with, and now nor is the show. And you've fallen fast when you have to struggle up the steps of your own bags, while just days before that you were not having any struggles because you weren't carrying your own bags. And this shot's really haunting. That's Krista Taylor there. And on the other side there, right next to her, of course, is Cate Blanchett. Really powerful sequence, slow motion. I really want to see all that footage released separately. I know that Todd Field shot some of it for his trailer, but I'd love to see those images again. They're so powerful. Phantom Megosmic, I think. I can't even pronounce it at this point. And these images are really good. There's a great music video called Mordant, which you need to go Mortar. Pardon me. You have to go and watch that video on YouTube, directed by Todd Field. Look at what Blanchett does here. Rips up this Marla, and she was practicing on that forever, and now she's no longer in it. She makes sure that is exacted. We'll see about all this. But look, we're getting toward the conclusion here, and you see how Cate Blanchett's character Lydia is welcoming with open arms her child Petra, and then look at on the right side, boom, look at what happens. Here comes Nina Hoss, and she's taking the child away from Cate Blanchett, and now Cate Blanchett is really livid here, and as you can know, she's distraught sitting there, and it's just her world is beginning to crumble like apple crumble, except apple crumble is more tasty, and this crumbling is not for her, but certainly for, I think, some of the people who don't like Lydia Tar. And here's the opening of the reverse. Again, this whole scene, remember we saw a shot earlier where Lydia Tar opened the door now, and she had a gleeful look, and she did that actually even on the news of Krista Taylor's taking her own life. But look here now, she's kind of a lot more serious and contemplative, and then she kind of indulges, there we go, here with this little kind of patronizing move about how much her music is liked and all the rest. And so but this is really a kind of a comedy. I said a wickedly macabre comedy, because now they say, oh well, you know what, your music's noisy. It's not even music, and now she's laughing at it. Kind of this matching with a previous shot that I talked about. And now this is really funny stuff. This very offbeat, and I talked about how this is dissonant and discordant. This whole movie is dissonant, is about dissonance and discordance. And here is another part of that dissonance and discordance right now with Cate Blanchett playing this piece of music, and she's singing well out of key, about 5 octaves out of key. And it's just funny and it works so well. It is absolutely the best. Then we see this other shot here that looks very much like something that Kubrick might do. And we see all of these seats. I love how these seats, these chambers are. And now the doors are opening and all these places are going to fill up very, very soon in short order. You might even see here, I think at some point you might see Andrus come in, but maybe I'm wrong. You might see him in the right here. Maybe that's him there. I think that is Andrus with Sebastian. That is Sebastian sitting there with Andrus. There you go. That's the first time I actually noticed it was Sebastian sitting with him, but you never really see their faces there. And so everyone is in attendance, and everyone's queued up to go, and the house lights go down, and there's the focus on the orchestra. And now we see something that seems like an anomaly again. This time the matching shot from earlier, the feet in the bathroom stall, and now we see the person who queued up Lydia Tar. I misspoke there for a reason, and you'll find out why later. And then we see her right here, Lydia Tar, who looks just not as good as she did earlier in terms of her composure here. She is feral looking now. She really looks very feral, as some kind of rat, literally. And now look, watch this. She is determined to crash the party, and she's going to do it. Watch her face here. She cannot hold the mask back anymore. She just breaks off this mask, and now look what she does. She just charges at Elliot, who is actually the person who's now conducting, and you can see there the horrified look rather of Susan, and then Olga as well is horrified. The whole group of musicians is horrified. And here is Elliot again, and now it's just going to be more violence. Look at this. Wow, this is what she really. I mean, this is how she's violent. I mean, look what she's doing there. And I wonder if this is a fantasy sequence. I'm always thinking they're going to just get up the next morning, or she's going to wake up and look at the way that Susan's looking at her. And then Fabian Deer here as Canute. Look at how he does this. I think this is the way to signify that this went kaput right there. Kind of like the sign of the cross. And you can now hear that score from Hilda Gunnardotter as this shot here. Love this shot. It's really good. Kind of, and then we cut from that to a New York City street and a cab driver and a voucher, and how low down on the pecking order Lydia Tar is now, basically in the 8.5 circle of hell. Although maybe it might be only at 5 at the moment there, but we see that's on 58th Street and Broadway literally, and we see this kind of mechanism of this industry going on in this empty lot. And here she is. It's just funny how she's sitting there in this kind of very faded, kind of brownish, milk chocolate brown coat. And now she's going to do all this work that's probably way below her pay scale and her expertise. This looks like either Queens or Staten Island. I think that from what I remember, Todd Field had said that this character, Lydia, is literally from Staten Island, and that she wanted an escape, and she probably suffered losses in her life early, like the passing of her father, perhaps. And so now she's really home. This is who Lydia Tar really is, where she lives. And she's reverting back to that little girl, perhaps, who either was afraid or needed more confidence, or was always someone who was kind of shunted off and marginalized. And now she's looking to return to that person and be the person that I think she probably started out being before she went down this very destructive, power-hungry, and very violently obsessive, and very vituperative and very inappropriate at best behavior that was, really it's criminal behavior that she's engaging in with these affairs and things. Even if they are consensual, as long as it's done in a transactional, work-related way or in a work way, it's still a crime. It's still something that you can get fired for and should get fired for from your job. I love how she reaches back here into her childhood. She's got a VHS recording, and see, that's her speed, is VHS and vinyl, whereas Olga's speed is YouTube and cell phones. And you see the old TV set there, and she's watching Leonard Bernstein right there. This is a key line and a key scene, and how we see this close-up of Lydia. And I love the way that Todd Field doesn't really judge her. I mean, there are characters in his film who judge her, but he doesn't judge her as a filmmaker. He doesn't judge anything in this film. He just places it there and invites you, the viewer, to have a look into your own heart and soul and think about what is right and what is wrong, who you like and who you don't. I mean, this film isn't really, though, about liking someone. It's important to be able to have conversations about these issues. And you see that Lydia Tar now has a lot of emotion from what it is that is being said by Leonard Bernstein. And it's moved her to tears. And I think that's the core of who she is. I said earlier, there's the dichotomy, and there's a lot of things that white European culture does with that. But in this film, certainly, I would say that Lydia Tar, to borrow a Todd Field line from this very movie, spoken by Lydia Tar herself, Lydia Tar is both a victim and a very powerful human being who, is an emotional assassin, and yet she's also a victim. You can be both, and power does that to you, whether you are male or female or black or white. It depends. You can be both a victim and a perpetrator. And that, I think, is what Lydia Tar undoubtedly is. And she gets found out here. Tony's her, I'd say, her bigger brother, maybe her younger brother, probably bigger brother. That's the, she says, why would I be hiding out? And Tony has, called her Linda, because that's her real name, is Linda. She changed it at some point, I'm sure, to Lydia. And now that she's back, she's known as Linda. And I love how her brother here, Tony, just dresses her down. You don't seem to know where the hell you came from or where you're going. And in some ways, that indictment by her own brother, Tony, is probably one of the most honest things in the film. She really doesn't know where she's going. But power is taking her there. Power is taking her there. And she will just improvise as she goes along. But Tony's making those comments based on what he knows of her as his sister, not what he sees of her in public, perhaps. And he knows who she is inside. And that's the thing that is probably causing an issue for Lydia in some way. Now she has a new lease on life as she heads to Thailand. I love how this shot here is, she just lets the air in. She just takes everything in. Now she's speaking to a number of people who are telling her about this particular conducting thing that she's going to be doing in their country here. And, the composer who was supposed to do it was out of town or was out of the country, couldn't do it. So now she's going to be the one to be the backup. I mean, she is way down the pecking order now. It's so interesting how that scene plays out. Just to let that play out there. And now they're in, I believe it's Thailand. And you can see The scope of this movie really travels. Lydia Tar with the dark glasses. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be seen. And here she is. You know, she's got the androgyny, and I love this shot here. This kind of open expanse down the river. And I love how deadpan this guy here is at the front of the image here. And he talks about crocodiles and Marlon Brando, and the crocodiles last a long time. It's just kind of this jab actually at Lydia Tar as well, because she's kind of a crocodile in her own right. Crocodile tears, perhaps, that we might have just seen earlier. And she's someone who wields power ruthlessly and for all the wrong reasons. I think she's a kid in a candy store. She can't believe that she's attained this position, and not that she's not done it through hard work. She has, but it's how she reacts to what she gets power-wise that is key, and how people react to her who don't have power and what they do to prop it up or challenge it. And if you notice so far, there have been only two people in this movie in earnest, maybe even three, but two who've challenged her. One of them was pushed out of the orchestra and basically demoted. That was Sebastian. The other one was Olga, who said, "Well, where did you get hurt? Where did you get attacked? Who attacked you? Where did you?" And you know, those two are the only two people, and Olga's the one that stayed behind. So you know, these appeals to and these challenges of people asking these questions, I think, is very important. I love this part here. She's going into this, I guess it's a massage parlor, and this is something that's uncomfortable, I think, because she's asking these girls who literally look like girls, who look like they are maybe underage girls, underage women, underage girls, and she's asking to pick a number. Do I have to pick a number? And one of these kids, is going to massage her. Look at them. They all look like they're under 20 years of age. Pretty much all of them do. And look at this. She looks like she's maybe about 12 or 13 or 14. And it's interesting that, look, they're all young. They're all under the age of 20, I'm sure. And she can't believe it. She's horrified because this is basically child, well, you know, fill in the blank. It's obvious what it is. It's very, very inappropriate and criminal. And she doesn't want any part of it. There's a light bulb. She does have a conscience. And she's not completely evil at all. I think she's afraid. And look at the lifting of the bed spreads. I think she's afraid. I think she's insecure, you know. And so here she goes walking through this long corridor. Stanley Kubrick, The Shining. That gives me a reminder of that, you know. And now she's teaching this orchestra in Thailand, and you can see that the way she's talking is different here, and you see the marketplace there in Indonesia, and again here you're going to see someone come in and say, "Look, we've got 5 minutes to go." There we go, right here. And here she goes. It's a habit of hers. I love this. I love that shot with the doorways. Fantastic. And now here she is. She's coming out to this orchestra. She shakes hands with the first violinist. She's wearing all black, and she gives a credit to the first violinist. And I love this shot here. This also kind of is an homage to several movies. I think one of them is Quiz Show, and there's others beyond that, going back some years. But look at that. I love that, the way that light just outlines her there in the black outfit against a black backdrop as the audience there is watching this. This is really, really good filmmaking. I mean, I can't stress enough how great this is. Dissonance is a massive part of this film. Interpretation, understanding, process. all of it. And look at this. This kind of could be a Halloween convention, but this is Monster Hunter. It's a very serious thing. It's, it's what people get into this, and then it's popular in various parts of the world, if I'm not mistaken. And everyone's ready. It's like a Comic Con convention in San Diego or something. But this is what people take this very seriously, and they're in the mood for this. And you just hear that, and there it is. And wow, here comes the closing credits, but in a different way, right? This is what we see, right? Cate Blanchett. What a marvelous performance that was. I mean, I expect that you will be hearing some very good things with Cate Blanchett, and they will rhyme with Oscar. So if you're listening to this after March of 2023, I will confidently tell you that she won an Oscar for this performance. And if I am wrong, well, you, by the way, have been listening to Omar Moore for the last 2 hours and almost 38 minutes. It's a long time. But I appreciate you sticking with me and listening to the commentary as you see these names of all of these great people who did this excellent work on this most excellent film. I love this film so much. You can follow me on Twitter at the Popcorn REEL. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's called Popcorn Reel. That's Popcorn REEL. Hit the subscribe button there. You'll see a lot more audio commentaries, and you'll see lots of videos as well. So please, please, please do subscribe to the Popcorn Reel YouTube channel. I love the tune, by the way, here. It's called Barbarian. It's a great tune, and I love it. It's by Besimorph and Jurgovitz, I think. You'll see the credit coming up with the name of the two people who did this tune, Barbarian. It's a very futuristic type of tune. It's a counter to what we heard at the beginning with the shaman who did the Icaro, at least Vargas Fernandez. And you'll see these names come up here now, and these are the concert names as they appear, the way they're arranged like this. It's really nicely done. A lot of care is taken with this film and how it's represented and what it says and what it does. And it's about power. It's about what's right and what's wrong. It's about dissonance. It's about what we hear, what we thought we heard, how we interpret, how we don't. It's about loads of things, and I didn't even scratch the surface of the things in this film that come up. But I'm telling you, there's so much to love about this movie, and more people need to watch this film, and I hope in time that they do. And when this thing does win awards, if it did, when it did, you will know that. Besimorph and Jurgaz were the performers of the work Barbarian that you hear there. This is a fantastic movie. My name is Omar Moore, and again, I'm a film critic. It's been great to be with you for the last 2 hours and 38 minutes. Take care.